Greetings, fellow Trekkies and Truckers. While I look at Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 4, now continues on with Accession. As Chief O'Brien and Dr. Bashir enter the cluttered O'Brien's quarters. Having just won the Battle of Brighton Hollow Suite, they lament that O'Brien must return the quarters to normal in preparation for Keiko's return after 6-month absence of Bajor. Bashir marks it as a shame for them to clear up the clutter. It feels like dismantling a monument to the chief's 6 months as bachelor. O'Brien certainly tells him that if they don't, Keiko will dismantle him. O'Brien greets Keiko and Molly warmly at the airlock and receive a surprise. During Keiko's last visit to Deep Space Nine, they got lucky and Keiko is pregnant again. In Ops, Major Kara welcomes Vedek Porta, a skirting young Bajoran couple who are hopeful that Captain Sisko, as the emissary of the Prophets, will bless their recent marriage. Sisko invites him into his office and recites a brief prayer in the Bajoran language. Kara, watching, is very moved, and the couple positively glow, thanking Sisko profusely before they leave. Before following them out, Porta compliments Sisko on his improved accent. After they are gone, Sisko says and confides to Dax how exhausting it is to be a religious icon to an entire planet, on top of all his Starfleet duties. Then Kara learns of something that is coming through the wormhole. A Bajoran lightship, which appears to be 300 years old. The passenger, a lone man, is beamed directly to the infirmary. When Sisko and Kara get there, the man lying down on the biobed introduces himself as the emissary. The mysterious man is Akoram Lan, a famous Bajoran poet from the 22nd century whose unfinished poem, The Call to Prophets, has become legendary. He explains that, while traveling his lightship, he was injured and thought he would die. Then he discovered the wormhole by mistake and was healed by the Prophets, who he believes delivered him to DS9 to be their emissary. He's surprised at Kira's presence upon learning her family name, as it indicates she should be an artist. Kira explains to the others that the Bajorans used to follow a strict caste system known as the Dajars, which dictated their occupation based on their family name, but abandoned it during the Cardassian occupation in order to allow them to become soldiers. Akoram is shocked to hear about the occupation, and realizes his people have suffered great hardships while he was gone. Sisko talks to Dax about Akoram's claim to be the emissary, a claim he is all too happy to support. He even uses some of the prophecies surrounding the emissary, which he has never believed in, to try and justify his position, although he admits he is just using them to convince himself as, instead of having the burden of the position removed, he has the Starfleet Command who has been uncomfortable with one of their officers occupying a central role in the Bajoran religion. Porter has already endorsed Akoram and is confident the Bajoran people will accept the change as long as Sisko makes it clear he's stepping aside voluntarily. Sisko feels a massive weight off his shoulders and couldn't be more relieved to rid himself of the title. As Chief O'Brien walks home from work, Bashir arrives to offer his congratulations on the baby and convinces him to have a celebratory drink and quarks. There, the two are surprised to be to the upcoming arrival, as Bashir notes that the second baby is usually earlier than the first for parents, as they know to expect. Usually easier than the first for the parents, as they know to expect. When they tell Quark the news, the Frankie muses back to when Nog was the baby and read Seabraca Choir. Worf then arrives for a drink and stiffens up when he hears Keiko is having a baby. O'Brien explains to Bashir that Worf delivered Molly since the Enterprise had been damaged and he was the only person available when Keiko went into labor. As Bashir jokes that he'll call him Worf if he needs any help, Worf schedules him leave to visit his parents on Earth when the baby is due. The promenade is crowded as Bajorans wait for the new emissary to give his first speech. Kira and Odo watch from the upper gallery as Akoram emerges from the Bajoran temple, and Odo gently asks Kira whether she sees the inherent contradiction in Akoram's accession. Before he appeared, Kara was entirely convinced that Sisko was the emissary, but now it's as if he never was. Kira says that the faith allows her to reconcile the contradiction. Akoram uses the speech to drop a bombshell. He believes he was returned after sowing with the prophets as the Bajorans have lost the way by abolishing the Dajars. Akoram intends to revive the Dajars as he believes it is the best way to heal Bajor's wounds after the occupation. There are some scattered applause from the crowd. Several, including Kira, look deeply troubled, as does Sisko, who was watching the speech in his office on his desktop monitor. In conference with Akoram and Vedek Porta in the wardroom, Sisko says adopting a caste-based discrimination system will make Bajor ineligible for Federation membership. Okorum sees it as an acceptable sacrifice, as does, not surprisingly, Kai Wen. Okorum assures Cisco that he does not accept Bajor to make the change overnight. For instance, First Minister Shakar, whose Tajara marks him as a farmer, will not be expected to resign immediately. Instead, Okorum is confident that, by the time of the next election cycle, few will vote for him. Cisco tries to persuade Okorum to reconsider giving up Federation membership. However, Okorum grabs Cisco's ear and raises his paw, saying it's strong, and understands why Kaiopaka thought he was the emissary and why Kai Wen feared him. In the diplomat, Kira's looking for a place to sit with her mug of Raktajino, but the place is full. Just as she is about to move on, Gia, a Bajari woman, interrupts her meal and surrenders her seat, seeing that Kira's Dajara outranks hers. Cisco, sitting nearby, says similar things have been happening all over the station. Both of them are troubled. Kira says it's not her place to question the emissary. Cisco is still disbelieving about how readily Bajor is making such drastic changes on Okorum's word, and Kira tells him that Cisco never fully grasped just how devoted the Bajorans are to the emissary. Cisco could have said the word, and they would have done anything. Unable to sleep, Cisco wanders a promenade at night, where he has visions of Kaiopaka, who proceeds to ask who he is several times. Confused, he says she should know him, but she responds critically that she can't know someone who does not know himself. She disappears, and lights turn back to normal before he can respond. When Cisco asks Bashir about the vision, he describes it as an orb shadow, which the Bajorans believe occur when a person is not following the will of the prophets as shown in the orbs. Religious explanations aside, it was caused by an overabundance of neuropeptides, and Cisco rarely accepts treatment to make the vision stop. Kira tries to follow her to Jara, which dictates that she resigns her commission in the Bajor militia and become an artist. Unfortunately, despite her best attempts, she ends up sculpting a flock of flightless birds in her quarters. It's clear that Kira has no aptitude or talent for artistry. She tries to make Vedic Portis see this, but Portis nonetheless stern his belief that the Dajaras are correct, and the prophets have chosen for Kira to be an artist. The O'Briens are enjoying time together at home. Miles plays with Molly, teaching her darts. Keiko has found the fur coat that Miles wears to the holosuite. Comments on the amount of time he spends there with Bashir. Miles responds jokingly that it keeps him out of trouble and kisses her. Kira needs to get back to some work, so Brian goes back to play with Molly, but her mood has changed. No one to play darts and content to draw by herself. With heading to Bobach, O'Brien eyes the fur coat. Cisco and Kira have their regular meeting in his office, going over station business and the duty roster. But Cisco is troubled as things are going from bad to worse when he received a communique from Starfleet Command responding to support the Bajoran situation. Although there is no direct statement of it, he can tell they are unhappy as he has failed his mission to ensure Bajor's entry into the Federation, which he finds ironic considering they never wanted him to be the emissary in the first place. And then gets worse as Kira explains that she has decided to resign in order to follow her to Jara. As soon as Cisco can find someone to take her post, she'll leave and move back to Dakur province. Cisco tells her that her position may be filled by someone else, but he considers her irreplaceable. This is an extremely sad moment between them as reality sets in. O'Brien and Bashir meet by chance at Quarks and realize they no longer have time for one another now that Keiko and Molly are back on the station. O'Brien mentions playing darts with Molly in their quarters, and Bashir is trying to teach more on how to play in the bar, but it's not the same for either of them. Gorg archly informs them that they are late for their weekly holosuite reservation. They realize that is something else they've had to give up. Cisco gets a call for Constable Odo to come to the promenade immediately, where Vedic has just been killed. The man, Vedic Amuda, fell from the second level and his neck was broken on impact. As Odo prepares to start an investigation, Vedic Porter comes forward and calmly announces that he pushed the man simply because he had uncleaned Dajara and was unwilling to resign as Vedic to follow his Dajara. Cisco, furious, orders him taken into custody. This is the last straw, as Cisco summons Okorum from Bajor for an urgent meeting, making clear that the murder was just the tip of the iceberg. Okorum is unwilling to change his position, causing Cisco to declare that he regrets giving up his role as emissary and is intent on challenging Okorum's claim to the title. However, both men know that there will be chaos if they force the Bajoran people to choose between them. Cisco asks Okorum to enter the wormhole with him and asks the prophets to choose. The two report a runabout and fly into the wormhole, at which point Cisco stops the runabout and the two men wait. Eventually, Cisco and Okorum are transported to the realm of the prophets. Okorum remains convinced that he is the emissary, but as usual, the prophets appear largely unconcerned. Okorum reminds them that he met the prophets first, but to the prophets, who have no linear concept of time, there is no first. They claim Cisco and Okorum's linear nature limits their comprehension, though Cisco states that you want to understand. They agree that the Dajars are part of the past, which the Cisco has taught them means. It is no more, it can never be again. Okorum is confused and asks why, then, do they send him into the future? They reply, for the Cisco, to remind him of the responsibilities he bears. Okorum, realizing that he's not the emissary, says he's been wrong about everything and that he should have been left to die. The prophets say they could return him to the point they found him, injured and dying. But Cisco requests they return Okorum to his own time as he is now, uninjured. After sailing and conferring with each other, the prophets say Okorum have no memory of his trip to the future, which Poe finds more acceptable as it will allow him to reunite with his wife and family. Telling the prophets that he's ready to go home, they return him to the past. Cisco still has questions, however. The prophets remind him that just as they are of Bajor, they emphasize that he is also of Bajor. On Cisco's acceptance of this, he is returned to the runabout. Back on the station, on the pretext of getting her husband treatment for his depression, Kira arranges for Miles and Bashir to spend time together again. In Quarks, Kira ironically presents Cisco with the gift of one of her sculptures and tells him that his earlier speech, which explained what happened to Okorum and that the prophets had wished the Bajorans to return the Dajars, went over very well. Cisco is reading the Call of the Prophets, which Kira is surprised to learn has not been finished. Kira fails to understand how she can still remember Okorum's work as unfinished when the prophets have changed the past in the new timeline. His work had been finished all along. Amused, Cisco notes that the prophets work in mysterious ways, to which Kira grins. They enter to when a Bajor man and start to approach the officers as Cisco if he can bestow a blessing on the girl at her upcoming birthday/coming of age celebration called the Etanu. Cisco happily agrees to the request, having now fully accepted his role as the emissary. Well, good for him. Alright. So now let's take a look at some continuity surrounding this episode. This episode is considered to be part 2 of the Emissary trilogy, with part 1 being Destiny and part 3 being Rapture. And as with Destiny, Cisco is initially very clear in this episode about how uncomfortable he is in his role as emissary of the prophets. However, this episode represents an important turning point in his attitude to this position. It's the second time the phrase "the Cisco" has been used, as was first used in the episode Prophet Motive, and it's the first time we hear the phrase "you are of Bajor." Both of these phrases will come to have great importance in the future. As well as that, this episode marks the point at which Cisco finally begins to accept his role as emissary. In Destiny, he accepted that there may be more to the prophecies than he was allowed for, but he didn't change his opinion about his own status in the Bajor religion. Throughout the 5th, 6th, and 7th seasons, he becomes more and more accepting of his position, something which can be seen most clearly in the 5th season episode Rapture, where he only accepts this role but embraces it and allows it to guide him. In his interactions with the prophets in episodes like Sacrifice of Angels, Image of the Sand, Shadow and Symbols, and, most importantly of all, the series finale, What You Leave Behind. This episode marks the final appearance of Camille Saviola Opaka on the series, with Opaka appearing first as Cisco in an orb shadow and then later as the form assumed by a prophet. During her meeting with Cisco, Kira mentions the 4-ship duty rotation she suggested him in Starship Down. Since then, it went through a probationary period, and Kira notes that it's improved the performance of crew members and they made less mistakes due to fatigue, so Cisco decides to make the change permanent. Bashir and O'Brien tease Worf about when he delivered Molly in 2368 in Disaster. Worf is so uncomfortable about this that he schedules leave so he will not be present when Keiko is due, just to make sure it does not happen again. Ironically, Worf does appear in the Begotten, but avoids helping with the birth. In the scene in Quarks where Bashir and O'Brien talk about playing darts without each other, a laboratory squeeze bottle can be seen out of the bar, redressed as some kind of alien drinking glass. Kira's line, that's the thing about faith. If you don't have it, you can't understand it. And if you do, no explanation is necessary. It's a paraphrase of a quotation often incorrectly attributed to St. Thomas Aquinas, which reads, to one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible. It's possibly more attributed to Father John Lafarge. Bashir and O'Brien ordered several pints of ale during this episode and never finished any of them. In one case, O'Brien leaves after having no more than a single mouthful. Quark's statement about everything babies handle goes straight into their ears is one of the few times that Ferengi says ears instead of lobes. Kirk Lofton, who plays Jake Sisko, does not appear in this episode, though he is mentioned by Miles when he tells Cake about a book he gave Molly that she really loves. Kira's lack of artistic skill was first mentioned in Season 2's The Circle, and Kira stated she had no artistic ability whatsoever. So overall, I think this episode is kind of interesting, and yeah, I think it's a good thing that Sisko has fully accepted his role as emissary, because if not, then yeah, I'm pretty sure things would not have gone down well in Bajoran history. So yeah, but anyway, so overall, I give Accession 3 warp cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in as we take a look at the next episode, Rules of Engagement. So until then, live long and prosper, everybody.